Hello, and welcome back to Astrology with Erin on Awakening Airwaves. I'm your host and astrologer, Erin, and I'm so glad you're here for the July 2026 astrology forecast. Each month, we take a look at the movements of the planets, the larger stories they're telling, and how those shifts show up in our lived experience, so we can navigate change with greater awareness. July is one of the most significant astrological months of the year so far. A rare series of aspects connects Jupiter in Leo, Uranus in Gemini, Neptune retrograde in Aries, and Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, creating a larger pattern that will shape not only this month, but much of the collective atmosphere of 2026 and beyond. At the same time, the Cancer new moon invites us to reconnect with what feels safe, familiar, and meaningful, while the Aquarius full moon asks us to consider our place within a rapidly changing future. Throughout the month, themes of innovation, reinvention, leadership, community, and collective transformation are impossible to ignore. I'm joined today by my friend and colleague, Anita Ashland. Anita is a Jungian writer working at the intersection of Hellenistic astrology and depth psychology. Most astrologers aren't trained Jungians, and most Jungians don't practice astrology. Anita's work lives in that rare overlap, bringing symbolic systems like astrology, tarot, and the I Ching into conversations with Jung's psychology of the soul. Her work explores how symbolic language can help us better understand ourselves, our patterns, and the deeper movements of the psyche. You can find her links in the description below. I'll be posting July horoscopes for all 12 rising signs on my individual YouTube channel, so be sure to subscribe at Astrology with Erin if you'd like a more personalized look at how these transits may show up in your life. I'd also love to invite you to join me for the second annual Awakening Conference this September, where I'll be presenting a masterclass on Uranus and Gemini through all 12 houses. We'll explore how this 7-year transit may bring disruption, innovation, awakening, and major change depending on where Gemini falls in your natal chart. You can find the registration link in the description below. And if you've been considering a natal astrology consultation, my books are currently open for July. I'm also currently offering 15% off all natal consultations through the summer with code SUMMER15. You can learn more about my consultations, read my latest lunar blogs, and join my mailing list at astrologywitherin.com. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps support my work and allows these conversations to reach more people. All right, there's a lot of astrology to cover this month, and I'm looking forward to exploring it with Anita. So let's dive in. Hi, and welcome back to Astrology with Erin, and welcome to your July 2026 astrology forecast. I am joined today by my friend and colleague, Anita Ashland, and we will be talking about the astrology of July. Anita, do you want to say hi to our listeners, tell them where they can find you in case they want to work with you, and anything you have going on?
Yes, yeah. Hello, everybody. So I'm Anita. I'm very much a student of Jungian psychology. That's at the foundation of what I do in my writing and in astrology. So I'm at that intersection. And I do consultations. My website is anitaashland.com. I have a newsletter. I'm also leading a seminar on living seasonally with astrology at the Jung Institute in Chicago on June 25th. So if you're interested in an in-person workshop, feel free to check that out.
Very cool. All right. Well, Anita, I'm excited to talk to you today about July. It's a big month. I would say arguably the most important month of 2026, if not a larger scale, if not the decade for that matter. So I think it Yeah, let's talk briefly about what it all entails. As I think my listeners know, and most people who are into astrology realize, we have had all year building this formation between Pluto and early Aquarius, sextiling, or Neptune is actually applying because Neptune moves faster, but Neptune in early Aries is sextiling Pluto. Uranus in early Gemini now is trining Pluto and sextiling Neptune. So we have this formation that's been forming. That's really the signature of 2026. It's very rare astrology, to say the very least. And here in July, we have the completion of this formation that some astrologers are calling a basket, some call a cradle. But as we get planets this summer going through early Leo, they are completing this. And we had Venus doing this at the end of June. So I guess that's sort of our preview there. And so from early Leo, she opposed Pluto, tri Neptune, sextiled Uranus, and then we will have Mars conjoining Uranus and hitting these aspects as well. And then we'll have Jupiter and the Sun going through early Leo to complete this basket as well. Did I summarize that
I think
properly? It's a lot. It's a whole lot.
mhm.
What do you think?
It is a whole lot. And in pondering that, I decided to turn to the I Ching to try to get insight on, three or four themes, because it gets overwhelming to ponder that much astrology. So the I Ching, if for anybody that's not familiar, it's like a 3,000-year-old ancient Chinese text that can be used for divination. I use the coin toss method to cast the I Ching. There's over 4,000 different readings you can get from it. And it's fascinating how precise it can be for your own personal situation when you consult it. In this case, I asked it for insight on the July astrology and to give a few themes. So I got hexagram 43, decisive action. So I can read from the oracle here and then summarize the few main themes. And this is directly from Benabel Wen's translation. After a long period of tension, there will be a breakthrough. Be careful, as there may be risks ahead. Your interests are not the only ones at stake in the endeavor. Be sure to warn others about the risks involved, but do not yet reveal your intentions. No gains from reactive combat. You intuit that you must take decisive action, but how? In which direction will you go? Send a prayer upward to heaven. Place full faith in the divine that blesses your path, and your prayer shall be answered. The solution will be a different path from the one initially conceived. And I'll also read the bolded lines. The sage will share the kingdom's abundance and prosperity downward to all people. In all laws, embody virtue and benevolence. The sage must be seen to embody virtue and benevolence. Make known throughout the king's court a sincere and stern warning cry declared throughout the capital. Unfavorable to respond with arms. This is not a martial incident. Favorable to embark on the journey.
Wow.
So, some of what you've already outlined about the July
Hmm.
astrology comes through here, and I picked a few themes. The first one being, this is not a martial incident. Most of us astrologers will be maybe saying, emphasizing the martial aspects of, like Mars, Uranus, which can be
Hmm.
explosive and volatile, but this is not a martial incident according to the I Ching. So,
Interesting.
and then we can talk more about these themes as we talk about
Right. We'll weave them
but
through sort
we
of as
will,
we get through the astrology. That's so
yeah.
powerful. I always find with
Hmm.
the I Ching, like you alluded
Hmm.
to, when you draw it for personal questions, um, the specificity with which it
I
often
know,
speaks yeah, it gives me the chills,
I
frankly.
know. And yeah, it really does. It helps just, it's just so, it really helps take our own egos out of it because you're getting this outside input. And yeah, it's quite striking. And then the other call out I have is the solution is a different path from the one initially conceived, very Uranian there. And
Mhm.
then your interests are not the only ones at stake. Your silence has costs for others. So, yeah.
Wow, yeah, your silence has cost for others. It's
Hmm.
really uh poignant also. Well, you
Hmm.
inspired me as we were getting ready and sort of settling in to talk about it to go ahead and pull a tarot card because I pretty much always have a deck here on my desk. Um, and this is, I drew from the Daydream Tarot deck. I just had this one sort of
Hmm.
laying on my desk. It's really artistic and really cute. And what did I pull but the Death card? No, it's kind of blurry, but you can see the little Grim Reaper there. And I thought, gosh, that's really appropriate. Um, yeah, not to be morbid and not trying to fearmonger ever.
Hmm.
But for those who practice tarot, I think a lot of people know the death card is not necessarily about literal death as much as it is about endings and transformation. So sort of major beginnings and major endings. And I thought that really spoke generally to this basket pattern. As we get into the astrology, we'll see, I think there's going to be some sort of shocking pivots. And I think there may be cases in which things that we thought were really important sort of fall away, and other things emerge in their place as priorities. And yeah, I expect that this month. I also think the death card, I always sort of associate it as Plutonian in a way. And so we have Pluto quite active this month as things oppose him. So very appropriate in the
Hmm.
divination
Hmm.
department.
Yes, very much so.
Okay, let me go ahead and share the chart and we can get to talking about it. So this has us here on July 1st. And as we see, as I noted, we have Pluto in early Aquarius. There is Neptune in early Aries, Uranus in early Gemini. And now we already have, he just entered at the end of June, Jupiter in early Leo, forming this is what I'm referring to as this basket pattern. Okay. So really, what do we have? The first thing happening is really Mars conjunct Uranus between July 4th and July 5th. Um, we have Mars making this conjunction to Uranus. And not only that, but then also hitting these other planets all within July 4th to July 5th. And yeah, I think it definitely bears worth saying. I think we'd be remiss not to say that this aspect, specifically in Gemini, Mars conjunct Uranus, has quite the history with the United States throughout the history of the country, and the fact that it's happening on July 4th, on the US's 250th sort of birthday or anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, is really striking. Is really striking astrology. And you were telling me, Anita, that you had some things to talk about with history with this one.
Yes, July 4th has been on my mind all year and just wanting to dive more into the history of the United States. And, it's the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And so there's one book in particular, Founding Son, or America's Founding Son he's actually a bass player, Bob Crawford. He And it's about John Quincy Adams. He describes it as a beach read, a history beach read, and it is. It does read like fiction, but it's been interesting. Yeah, Heather Cox Richardson and Joanne Freeman are two historians that I follow and
Me too.
listen to everything that they say and write. And the the Declaration of Independence wasn't handed down from on high. The people in local communities were asked to gather together and speak to what the independence meant to them. And it's considered the other declarations. I think there's almost 100 of them that have been found. So uh, it was very much a community effort, which I think is important. That that to think about how ordinary people weighed in and deliberately signed on, and for all of us too, we should ponder what does independence mean to us, and that's something for us to ponder as well. And also
Mhm.
those founding folk, as Joanne Freeman refers to them, like the phrase "we the people." Admittedly, back then we would just pretty much referred to white men, but however, you know, we can keep expanding the document. The Declaration of Independence can be expanded, and it's been an inspiration for marginalized groups too in their pursuit of more independence. That Joanne Freeman has describes it how has provided rungs on the ladder for marginalized people as well. And then for people who weren't included in the original we. So I've been thinking a lot about that too, and about that basket configuration, how maybe we can more expand the definition of we and we the people.
Mhm.
And John Quincy Adams himself, I've been thinking a lot about him because he was the son of John Adams, a founding father, and John JQA was born July 11th, birth date, born under an exact full moon. We can talk more about that when we talk about the full moon. He was born under a full moon in Capricorn, Cancer sun, just like in the United States chart. So his story really calls out so many of the delineations here in the July astrology that the more I learn about history, the more I hear historians say events don't repeat, but people do. So to study the people from these different eras
Mhm.
and how did they get through it? And after an unsuccessful presidency, he went on to serve 17 years in Congress, which is unheard of for a president to condescend to doing that. And so there was so many lessons to be learned from him, and how abolitionism was able to grow while he was in Congress. So we can speak more about that later. But that's some of what's been on my mind as far as history. And when you're an astrologer, I mean, history goes hand in hand with that, because there's all these dates when you're reading, and then pausing and looking
Yeah.
up charts and stumbling across all these interesting astrological signatures while reading. That I just love that. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think it would take quite a lot of humility and a great call to service
Hmm.
to go from president to
Hmm.
uh, congressional representative like that.
Hmm.
Um, Speaking of dates and sort of why I mentioned this history that Mars, Uranus, and Gemini has with our country, I'll throw some dates out there. So, um, the US was sort of born, or the Declaration of Independence signed, while while Uranus was in Gemini. And I believe the US Sibley chart also has Mars in Gemini in the seventh house too. So this is sort of it's a repetition of it's a recurrence transit,
Hmm.
I guess is what some astrologers would call it,
Hmm.
for the US itself. So we had four exact hits of Mars conjoining Uranus in Gemini between 1774 and 1782. So that was the US independence, the Revolutionary War, Declaration of Independence. and really a radical break from existing political authority. It was an experiment, right? And we hear that cited in our history often.
Mhm.
And then the next time that Mars conjoined Uranus and Gemini was again 4 exact hits between 1858, or really 1859, I think, and co-presence probably started 1858 and 1866. And so here we have the time of the Civil War. One of the exact hits, the second one, occurred really just days after the bombardment of Fort Sumter in April of 1861. And that marks the beginning of the American Civil War. So we saw secession, Civil War, national division, and the redefinition of the United States itself. And then the next time was the World War II cycle. So we had actually 5 exact hits um, between 1941 and 1949. And so again, this period is associated with World War II, the Manhattan Project, atomic weapons, the emergence of modern computing, the beginning of the Cold War, and the creation of the United Nations. So we see these themes of war, technological revolution. Each one of these wars was fought very differently, right? With different technology, new communication systems, and really major geopolitical realignment and realignment of allies. And yeah, different divisions of power, right? Some countries rising in power and some losing power. So that probably gives us some themes to imagine on the greater scale, on the collective scale around us. Um, Personally, I would say, like in our personal lives, this could be quite destabilizing. I mean, be careful with your fireworks. I'll say that on 4th of July because Mars Uranus can be quite volatile, explosive. Um, And yeah, be ready to pivot. Things may change really rapidly around this time, and that's probably true for the entire month, truly. Um, but yeah, I think it's very possible the future is sort of arriving sooner than we expected around this time. So, as we said,
Agreed.
this is July 4th and July 5th. Mars will complete his aspects to Neptune and Pluto as well. So he's really reminding us of this entire larger network of great change that's happening around us. Anything else to say about that one, Anita, before we move forward
I
into the
guess
month?
I guess just to emphasize the hexagram that reminds us not to be reactive and chaotic, but to maintain focus and calm and channel our energy into
Yeah,
local and creative innovation and not chaos. Don't feed the chaos.
I think that's really good advice. Yeah, there will probably be plenty of chaos around
Mm-hmm.
us.
Mm-hmm.
Staying grounded, keeping our heads is
Yep.
excellent advice. Um, And what does Rick Levine say? Think cosmically, act locally. You can
Yes.
have the greatest impact in your local environment, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if there's chaos, like who in your neighborhood can you help? You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, what can you do on your local level?
Mm-hmm.
So lots of things to think about here at the beginning of July. Um, And as we move forward, we have a couple of things then happening. This is July 6th. We have the sun is going to square Saturn, which is quite serious and somber. And then Neptune's immediately here stationing retrograde. So yeah, that to me looks like maybe a point of reckoning in a way, not to be too hyperbolic about it, but it's quite serious. So there's like reassessment happening. I'm confronted with something, that's that's very real and potentially emotional or emotionally impactive with the sun here in Cancer. Um, and then with Neptune stationing retrograde, I think of reimagining or revising dreams, vision, imagination, spiritual reflection, reassessment of ideals. And, Neptune will be retrograde for about a third of the year now. So this is a longer sort of stretch, and we have time to sort of reimagine and revise. This will just be the beginning. But we do tend to sort of feel these stations, I think, of the outer planets more around the station point within those days. Um, and then next we'll have Venus entering Virgo, which is her place of fall on July 9th, and pretty much immediately conjoining Ketu, the south node of the moon, the eclipse point. So I don't love this as a Venus ruled person. If Venus is about diplomacy, connection, relationship, moving into her fall is, reducing dignity and all of those things.
Mhm.
And her conjoining K2, I think of a release, detachment. On the personal level, there could be relationship issues, karmic relationships, or patterns that we need to release, and this could be constructive. Um, on a larger level, though, it could be like releasing uh, allyship or, alignment, agreements, um, changes in values, perhaps as well. The positive thing about Venus and Virgo, I think, is very service oriented. They can be very practical. She's not showy like she is in
Mhm.
Leo. Um, yeah, her love language is acts of service in Virgo for sure. Did you say that John Quincy Adams had Venus in Virgo also as
He does
his ascendant
at
ruler?
at the first degree of Venus. So,
The first degree of Virgo. So yeah, so this is
or
kind of
Virgo. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
his Venus return. That's really interesting.
It is. Yeah. Definitely his wheelhouse. But yeah, definitely, as you said, she's being stripped of her usual showiness and ego desires, and definitely a time to reevaluate personal values and relationship dynamics,
Mm-hmm.
and to stay
Mm-hmm.
guarded against external manipulation,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, try to avoid interpersonal traps. JQA wasn't always good at that, but he tried.
Yeah. Well, it was probably a lifelong lesson for him.
Is it? Yeah.
That's how these
Yeah.
things often work.
Mhm.
But yeah, as you sort of mentioned, K2, the tail of the dragon, is very good at dissolving ego. Very good at that. There's this digestive fire that sort of happens in the tail of the dragon, and it's headless, right? And there's like no ego
Mhm.
without a head. Um, So that's potentially constructive, not necessarily comfortable, but potentially constructive. And then as we move forward, just a couple of days, what we'll have is she's going to square Uranus, and that's the only outer planet she's going to aspect by a traditional aspect, by the aspects that we use um, from Virgo, but she's going to square Uranus. So that again could be sort of jarring, surprising. There could be some real surprises in relationships, both on the personal and collective level. I think old preferences, even down to things like style, old preferences may no longer fit. Um, Perfectionism, overthinking could become a challenge,
Mhm.
or it could be something, especially in personal relationships or personal relationship patterns. If you have a tendency to overthink, this may really come to the forefront of your attention at this time. And there could be some useful distinctions emerging between what is really valuable, and what's just familiar, what's simply the comfort zone. So, in that way, it could be quite constructive. What do you think, Anita? Anything more to add on that?
No, yeah, I think it could be quite constructive and then quite stimulating. But then, of course, Mars will enter the picture later in the month.
As she squares Mars.
Hmm.
Yes, but first we have the Cancer new moon, 21 degrees of Cancer. Mercury is here, still retrograde. He stationed retrograde at the end of June. So he's still retrograde for this first part of July. And not really aspecting a whole lot else. I mean, generally square Saturn, but past it. The moon is in her own domicile here, so she's quite comfortable. I kind of like this full moon. I mean, I think there could really be some reassessment with Mercury retrograde here around the emotional sort of comfort zone. I have found Jupiter in Cancer to be very protective, which can be positive, but it can also be sort of stunting, um,
Hmm.
in ways also. And so with Jupiter having moved off into Leo, where he's more young and externally oriented, with his expansion, I wonder if we aren't sort of reassessing, um, what were we holding on to so tight? What were we so protective over with Jupiter coming through here? And, does that still serve us? Um, is there some emotional renewal that may be due? It's also between the fixed stars Castor and Pollux, which I
Hmm.
don't have on the chart, but those are the two twins of the sign of
Hmm.
Gemini, actually. The mortal one, I think Castor is mortal and Pollux is immortal. Yes, that's what my notes say. So I think this brings themes of, yeah, the human struggle. What does it mean to be human? Um, Triumph over difficulty, potentially. The tension between what is temporary and what is enduring, and the tension between human vulnerability versus divine resilience, and potentially revisiting the past in order to move forward, as I sort of implied here with Mercury retrograde. So that should be an interesting new moon.
For
Anything
sure.
else to add before we move into this is
I
going to
was
be a really big jaunt.
thinking of John Quincy Adams. Cancer was his 10th house,
Yeah,
and
with his
how
son there.
he knew he wouldn't live long enough to see slavery be abolished, but he held up the ladder anyway so people could continue to climb the rungs, even though he wouldn't be able to see the end
Hmm.
result. And he just really endured a lot of difficulties. There was a gag rule against him and all of that. But, he did move things forward both for the United States and for himself too.
Hmm.
He just really exhibits that Cancer archetype so well. And that new moon,
Reminds.
that choosing to condescend from the presidency to being just a mere congressperson.
Hmm.
Very, just very Cancerian there, to help ensure that the people could continue to have a voice and continue to petition and keep that right alive for people. So,
Yeah, it makes me think a couple of things. In mundane astrology, which is astrology of, sort of the collective, the moon represents the people.
mhm,
And of course, this is the moon sign. Um, you said he was sort of gagged or silenced at
mhm,
one point.
mhm. Hmm.
Mercury in Cancer is considered to be mute and especially
Hmm.
retrograde. That's probably additionally true. Um, and then what you were saying about, he knew he wouldn't live to see sort of the fruits of his labor.
Hmm.
And it makes me
Hmm.
think about that saying about planting trees that you know you'll never
Hmm.
get to sit in the shade of. So,
Yep.
yeah, those are thoughts about what might be sort of going on during this time and what we
Hmm.
might be being asked to do and contribute to. All right. And then if we move forward, we have this whole middle of the month. It's just jam-packed.
Hmm.
And this is basically the activation, it's sort of here we go with this basket pattern. So the first thing we have happening is on July 15th, Uranus is going to perfect his sextile to Neptune. Or no, sorry, Uranus is going to first perfect his trine to Pluto. Um, no, maybe he's not. Hold on. It's really all at the same time, though, so it probably doesn't really
It
matter
is
that
all
much.
within a day. Yeah.
Okay, no, he hits Neptune first, then Pluto. Um, so this is actually the first time Uranus is trying Pluto since 1922. I was like, oh, wow.
Mm.
That's a big
Yeah.
one. Because it's a very slow cycle. These are two pretty slow moving outer planets. Um, but basically he's doing this, yes, the same, the 15th through 17th. We're going to have Uranus sextiling Neptune and then trining Pluto. So it makes me think certainly of innovation, collective evolution, cultural change, new paradigms. As we alluded to in the intro, these are big changes. These are monumental changes. It's hard to overstate how big this is. They're really generational aspects. And I'm sure that we will see, are already seeing technological and social developments, but we will likely see it just accelerating even more. New systems begin emerging, and there's likely going to be long-term implications that are not yet fully visible and will play out over probably, at least the rest of this decade, if not next decade also. But the future begins to sort of reveal itself. In the midst of this, we're also having Mars sextile Saturn, which happens, I think, on the 19th, which could be really constructive for action, for taking action based on this new information that may be coming through here. Disciplined effort. And then July 20th through 21st, I guess that is really just all in a row.
Mhm.
We're going to have Jupiter joining the party. So he's first going to trine Neptune, then oppose Pluto, then sextile Uranus. This is the first exact Jupiter Pluto opposition since 2014. We could also think about the last Jupiter Pluto conjunction as a seeding point in 2020, which would have been in Capricorn. This will probably bring themes, certainly of expansion and power, um, faith and power, potentially around wealth. There's usually themes around wealth with Jupiter and Pluto involved. Um, there could be big ambitions that emerge, and with the opposition, there's likely to be some conflict, probably around influence, authority.
Mhm.
Um, you may see people speaking truth to power, I think, during this time. And creative breakthroughs could really become a possibility here, especially on the more individual level, but collectively too. But narratives will likely be shifting dramatically here. So I'm going to stop there, Anita, and ask you what you have to say about this. This is our basket pattern right here in the middle of the
Hmm.
month.
Yeah, our hexagram 43 theme of the solution is a different path from the one initially conceived is highlighted here.
Mhm.
Uranus disrupts, but it also redirects. So the question isn't what force to use, but what direction to turn. And then also, another theme of the hexagram is to make known throughout the king's court a sincere and stern warning cry. So speak into the center of power, Pluto, not from the margins, not quietly. The hexagram is not asking us for a whisper. So, continue to focus on sharing from our energetic abundance downward to support the wider whole. And that's,
Mhm.
John Quincy Adams, the various abolitionist groups would sometimes ask him to formally join their groups. And he said, no, I'm better off, serving in Congress by helping to ensure people have the right to petition. So he wasn't promoting the cause of abolition directly, but the right to petition, for preserving that right to petition helped ensure that the abolitionist movements could grow. So that shared abundance to support the wider whole. So yeah, that's quite a powerful
Very
Jupiter statement
powerful.
in there in late July.
Yeah, definitely not quiet. If Cancer is a mute sign,
Yeah.
we can say Leo is a feral sign, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's represented by the lion,
Mm-hmm.
king of the beasts. There may be roaring going on here.
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't be surprising at all. Um, so yeah, just very, very big stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, it's hard to understate it or overstate it. I mean, it's hard to
Exactly.
overstate it because it's just so big, and I think there'll be like reverberation sort of echoing out from this. I do expect really big events in the month of
Mm-hmm.
July. I really do, especially with
Mm-hmm.
the fact that all of these aspects are perfecting so closely together is really notable. With these planets all moving so slowly, like the sort of likelihood that they all line up at once
Mm-hmm.
is seems very low statistically.
Yes.
So it's very meaningful. And I think there will be reverberations from this moment sort of into years to come. All right. Onward then into the month, we have next thing that we sort of have going on is the sun entering Leo on July 22nd. Happy birthday to all of our Leo sun friends, including myself. Are you Leo sun too, Anita?
Gemini sun.
Oh, you're Gemini sun. I don't know why I
So,
was thinking Leo. Um, and then we also have a Mercury stationing direct really right around the same time. So that's really interesting too, sort of built into everything else that's been
mm-hmm.
going on. It's like Mercury has been sort of revisiting something, probably largely emotionally and mentally, quite internally, over the course of his retrograde here in Cancer. But he's probably come to some sort of conclusion. And I do like that Venus then, which is kind of rare because normally Mercury moves faster than Venus, right? So he would be the
Mm-hmm.
applying planet in most of their aspects. But here we actually have Venus moving faster than Mercury because of his retrograde, and she is sextiling him, sort of at the same time he's stationing direct. So there's a little friendly kiss. So perhaps we are getting some clarity around this time. The sun is in domicile in Leo, much stronger than in Cancer, and much more prepared for sort of outward and forward movement. So delays may gradually ease, decisions will likely become easier. There could be some more conversations could be become more productive. There could be some reconciliation if there has been some sort of drama or disagreement. Certainly won't hurt there. And we might be getting some clarity on some of our relationships, both personal and collective. Um, Anything else to say about that, Anita? It's kind of minor compared to a lot of the other things we have going on.
It's good timing. It should help us get more out of our shell and be more comfortable speaking up, which
Mhm.
the astrology the rest of the month will be pretty much
Really
demanding of us.
asking for, yeah, I was just
Hmm.
noticing the moon is opposing Uranus at the same time and sort of
Hmm.
interacting with
Hmm.
all of these planets around 4 or 5 degrees. So it really ties it into the rest of the month. Okay, on the 25th, 26th, we have Neptune completing his exact sextile to Pluto. And this is the first exact hit of that aspect since 1986.
Well,
Um, so I was in kindergarten, so that's that's a
uh,
pretty big deal.
so I was in college, but I guess a little bit older.
A little bit, but yeah. That was a while ago. So 30 years, right? Yep. Pretty much exactly. So Neptune Pluto themes. Again, deep collective transformation, potentially spiritual evolution, cultural reorientation. And then we have Saturn actually stationing retrograde right at the same time. The next day, July 26th, is when that sort of hits. And this should bring us some reassessment of commitments, revisiting of our responsibilities, and structural revisions, probably refining our long-term
Hmm.
plans. So again, I think that's really sort of like woven into everything else. With all of this
Hmm.
changing, we have to be asking ourselves, what are my priorities? What are my commitments? To whom? What's most
Hmm.
important now? As we go through these large sort of outer and collective shifts, there's always inner reorientation that's required. So that's probably how I would see that. And then the sun's gonna start his interaction with this basket pattern too, really trining Neptune here on the 27th. Actually, he's going to oppose Pluto. He does it all at the same time. Once again, he opposes Pluto, trines Neptune, sextiles Uranus. So all at the same time. So to me, I think this looks like awareness now, awareness of what all this is and probably how it's going to impact us more on a personal level.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, this sort of revision of responsibility and commitment based on that.
And hopefully with the Saturn retrograde in Aries, maybe a little bit of an opportunity to catch our breath with whatever has been going on in Aries this year since Saturn and Neptune entered, and,
Yeah,
and kind
that
of
might be true.
reassess. And
Saturn in
maybe
Aries has been a bugger,
it
uh,
has.
in my opinion. And I'm not sad that he's not going to finish the second half of Aries right now. I mean, obviously,
Hmm.
we still have to do that. But
Yes. Yeah.
it's sort of,
Yeah.
yes, it's maybe a breath, an opportunity to go back over some of the decisions that have been made, the wisdom or lack thereof involved, the fairness and lack thereof involved. So yeah, I think we could be
Hmm.
going and the structures that we've been building and have those been, been based on good information and wise decisions, responsible decisions, have the things that we have initiated, started, which Aries
Mhm.
loves to do, have we done so uh, with endurance in mind? Um, so Saturn will ask us all those questions,
Mhm.
as he loves to do.
Yeah, even being um, in his fall there, it still has been a very loud transit and eventful. And with my IC degree is at 18 degrees of Aries, so just yeah, stay away from there for a little bit. Yeah, looking
Yeah.
forward to the retrograde just purely from that perspective too.
What's your rising sign, Anita? Capricorn?
Sagittarius,
Sagittarius. Okay. But you have your IC in the fifth then. All right.
yeah, I do.
Yeah, Aries is my seventh, so it's angular and
Mm,
squaring
yeah,
squaring my other business and
yes, yes. So I'm sure quite noticeable for you.
very noticeable for me. So yeah, I guess I would watch. I mean, this whole month we're all going to feel it's going to be
Mhm,
probably quite difficult unless you are really tracking the planets closely, and maybe are accustomed to doing that. It's probably going to be difficult to parse out like what is what. Um, But just like Neptune's retrograde, this he'll be retrograde for about a third of the year. So we'll be going back over a lot of things. And what will inevitably happen too, not necessarily for July, but because Saturn moves more, quickly than Neptune, he's now applying again to that Saturn-Neptune conjunction,
mhm,
that seed that was planted in February. So we're going to revisit some of these themes around dissolution of structure, disappointment, uh, shedding old illusions, disillusionment. There could be some revisiting of a lot of that. We're not done quite with that yet, even though that doesn't perfect again. I think we'll be finding ourselves revisiting it. But yeah, it's really interesting to me too. I think that, Mars, when he activates things, he sort of the order he goes in because he can join Uranus, sextiled Neptune, trine Pluto, and now we have the sun sort of going in the opposite order. He's going to oppose Pluto, trine Neptune, and then sextile Uranus. So I was just kind of sitting with that and thinking like sort of what does that mean? I mean, they're like all the reason being, of course, is because the outer planets have aspected each other. So they're sort of switched order just by the minutes of the degrees that they're sitting in. And it's all happening really quickly.
mhm,
Um, but I think if Mars is sort of initiating and bringing, these changes and these actions to us, the sun is asking us to open our eyes to probably both the consequences and possibilities of these situations. He's bringing us awareness, um, and yeah, it's like in the reverse order. It's like okay, the confrontation with power, the change of vision. Um, and then potentially what needs to change in probably both my thought processes and in my actions in the material world going forward as a result of this. So I think that's kind of how I'm reading this.
mhm.
We're really being asked, I think, to step into the future, into a future reality that we probably weren't prepared for, um, may or may not have felt coming. And I think it sort of arrives at once. Pretty big
And
stuff.
I think the first decan of Leo is that Five of Wands in the tarot.
Hmm. Hmm.
So all
Saturn
the
ruled Decan.
yeah, all the people in a group there being very busy. Five of Wands.
Yeah, there's a struggle there, and
Mm-hmm.
I think some tarot readers point out that it's almost like a mock battle. It's like, are they really trying to
Mm-hmm.
hurt each
You're
other?
right.
Or basically, are they LARPing? That's kind of what it looks
Hmm.
like to me.
Hmm.
Or is this some sort of live action role play? It's often associated, especially as a Saturn ruled decan. I think it's often associated with the struggle for material security, the struggle for wealth. And there's like this competition. We're not trying to truly hurt one another, but there's a struggle to get sort of to the top. Um, I think especially with that first decade in Leo, the sort of story of Leo, there's definitely something to prove in that first decade of
Hmm.
Leo. It's like the sun's going, I am a star, like, but nobody knows it yet. Nobody believes it yet because I've
Hmm.
not proven myself. And then in the middle decade, which is ruled by Jupiter, we've sort of made it to the top. And then the last decan of Leo is sort of about defending your position and choosing your hill to die on,
Hmm.
knowing that the sun will inevitably set.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so that's interesting to think about too, about like this sort of place of, it's definitely go time, I
Hmm.
would say.
And Pluto, that's in the first deck in the Aquarius, is Five of Swords. So kind of interesting to
Hmm.
compare and contrast those two cards.
Hmm. Yeah, where there is some sort of defeat. There's winners and
Hmm.
losers, aren't there?
Hmm.
In the
Yeah,
Five
for
of
sure.
Swords.
Yeah.
Yeah, super interesting to think about. Okay. Well, that brings us really into the end of the month. The last thing I have on my list is this full moon in Aquarius, which is very powerful in its own right and is happening at the same time that the sun joins Jupiter. So this is a reset in the synodic cycle between the sun and Jupiter, it's sort of a rebirth for Jupiter, seeding point. And then, of course, the moon is opposite in this first decan of Aquarius, the first 10 degrees, and really closely conjunct Pluto. So that looks like a very powerful full moon. I didn't mention, I guess, but the nodes change
Hmm.
signs. This I have the true node. Some astrologers use the true node calculation, some use the mean. I tend to use the true. So the true nodes change signs from that Virgo Pisces axis into the Leo Aquarius axis. That was July 27th. So really just a day before, or no, 2 days before this full moon. So the nodes are our eclipse points when we have a new or full moon within about 15 degrees. Some people say 13, some say 18. It kind of depends, and it depends on some other things about whether or not we actually like see an eclipse. But when we have a new or full moon close to one of these nodes, we do get an eclipse. This is not an eclipse. It's too far away. It's 23 degrees away still. But it's perhaps hinting. We have had that one eclipse in Aquarius already. Eclipse season starts in August, this upcoming season. So just next month, we will get two eclipses. And so this one is sort of hinting again, eclipses often bring themes around major change, big beginnings and endings. So, on a personal level, I think it would be very wise to start already thinking about what axis does this fall on in your own chart, Leo Aquarius, because there's going to be a lot happening there, a lot of change happening, potentially a lot of tension. I feel like this full moon is very tense looking. I mean, conjunct Pluto, like,
Hmm.
and along with the Jupiter Pluto opposition, it's really tied in with these other outer planets as well. So, tension between what? Well, perhaps individual creativity, individual expression, the need to sort of have the sunshine on you to be the center of attention, the tension between that versus collective needs. How does my personal expression, and Casey and I talked a bit about this last month too, with Venus going through Leo. How does my personal expression, my need for attention, for validation, um, how does that interact with the needs of the collective? Is it helpful for other people? Am I trying to take up too much space, or am I using my ability to command attention for the benefit of others? Um, that's probably the
Mm-hmm.
best, most constructive use of this time. But there will probably be some confrontations around how those two things are potentially at odds and how to reconcile that
Mm-hmm.
community versus personal recognition. And then along with the Jupiter really resetting with the sun, there could be a renewal of real confidence, leadership, vision. So I think we may have new leaders, new community leaders emerging during this time. That's a real possibility, potentially very charismatic ones with this Jupiter, Sun, and Leo. What else do you think about that,
Mm.
Anita?
Yeah, that's just such an amazing configuration there. I've been thinking about what Jungian analyst Murray Stein says about transformation, because that's kind of an overused word with Pluto.
Hmm.
But seeing it here opposite the Sun and Jupiter, I think of what he says. He says transformation is not the same as change, as in changing from one thing to another. Rather, transformation means drawing something out of what was there all along, bringing it to consciousness and giving it more expression. So I think Jupiter and the Sun together would be good at that, bringing that, bringing more expression to what was there all along that Pluto wants us to see. So
Absolutely,
couldn't
yes.
couldn't make it through this without doing at least one quote.
No, I
It's
love it. I was just noticing the aspect you mentioned. I don't think it's even in my notes. There's so much going on this month. I think I totally failed to write this one down. But Venus has completed her square to Mars
yeah,
from
poor
21
Venus.
Virgo. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
just
gonna
not getting
get
a
beat
break.
up there.
Just as
Um,
soon as she was starting to feel good, maybe with the square from
mhm.
Uranus and being more sparkly and inspirational, then now here comes the hammer.
Yeah, it's like she helped out Mercury with that sextile.
Hmm.
Uh, I think he was more, that was better for him than it was for her.
Hmm.
And now this is just playing hard on her. Like,
Yes. So.
and it's really sort of, it's, just minutes past perfect under this full moon. So
Hmm.
I would definitely say it's blending in here. Again, I mean, it looks like tension in relationship.
Hmm.
Um, and so we could blend that into our thoughts on, how do I show up personally? How does it serve the collective? And there,
Hmm.
the square is also a tense aspect along with the opposition. So it just looks like a lot of tension in that regard.
Hmm.
A lot of tension. And with these being Mercury signs, both Gemini and Virgo, it's not quiet. There's nothing quiet about this full moon.
Hmm.
It's going to be quite verbal and quite loud, even
Indeed.
with Mercury still in this mute sign. I think it's going to be, yeah, maybe not well articulated potentially, but loud.
So again, with the
Um,
hexagram that said this is not a martial incident. So
we could have people
try,
overreacting
and
too.
in the collective, we might see that, but we
Hmm.
ourselves should not try to be martial.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, not martial in at least the traditional
Mm.
or like sort of
Mm-mm.
overreactive or violent sense.
In the speaking up sense, to be martial,
Right.
because the silence has costs, and to take up space on behalf of others, not just for ourselves.
Hmm. And I think we're really being called to do that, especially again as we
Hmm.
will start to see eclipses on this Leo Aquarius axis with the North Node Rahu here going through Aquarius, we are being asked to look at the needs of the collective and how we show up there. There's going to be additional focus there. So I think, yeah, I mean, that's probably a good thing to sort of close out on too. Like, what's the advice for this month? So I think to be very sort of deliberate and thoughtful with your actions, not to overreact, slow down where we can. These retrogrades might be inspiring us to do that as well. Um, and yeah, and to think about how your actions or what you're feeling sort of driven or compelled to do, how that's going to affect your community and the other
Mm-hmm.
people in your spheres. Yeah.
Yep, totally agree.
Any other words of wisdom before we close out, Anita?
No, I think we covered everything.
I think we did too. Well, I really appreciate you joining me for this. It was a big month to get through. I think now we have to live it.
Yes, we do. So,
And we'll have to, yeah, stay in touch and
mhm,
revisit how all of this comes out for
for sure.
us. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining me. All right. So, to our listeners, good luck out there in July. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and drop us a link in the comments and let us know what's happening for you this month, what's coming up, what resonated, um, and yeah, and how July turns out for you. All right. Thank you. Bye. Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me for your July 2026 astrology forecast. And a special thank you to my guest, Anita Ashland, for sharing her insight and perspective in this conversation. July is a month of acceleration, innovation, and collective turning points. Mars's conjunction with Uranus in Gemini activates a larger pattern involving Jupiter, Neptune, and Pluto that will continue shaping the second half of 2026 and beyond. At the same time, the Cancer new moon invites us to strengthen our foundations, while the Aquarius full moon asks us to consider our place within a rapidly changing world. I'd also love to invite you to join us for the second annual Awakening Conference happening live online September 18th through the 20th. My masterclass will explore Uranus and Gemini through all 12 houses and where this revolutionary transit will bring awakening, disruption, and opportunity in your own life over the coming years. Early bird registration is currently only $44 and includes special offers from the presenters, including $33 off a natal consultation with me. You'll find the registration link in the description below. I'd also love to hear how these transits are showing up in your life, so feel free to leave a comment and let me know what's resonating. And if you'd like a more focused look at the month ahead, be sure to visit my YouTube channel, at Astrology with Erin, where you'll find July horoscopes for all 12 signs. Okay, I'll be back next month with your August 2026 astrology forecast. Thank you again for being here. Until next time, take good care, and may you trust the divine timing unfolding in your life.